This is Rugby Unity. I am David Pembroke, and it's full time in Paris, France 36, Ireland 14. Eddie Jones, you watched the game. What did you think?
Well, three things to come out of the game for me. Again, the influence of the contestable kick. It seemed like in the first half, France won all the crumbs from contestable kicks, and therefore had the flow of the game. Were able to score a considerable number of points. Second thing, up until the last 10 minutes, it was almost a joy to watch little TMO. At the end, we had a little bit more TMO, and I thought the game flowed really well. There was a nice rhythm to the game. And the third was France. Yeah, when they were able to get any sort of momentum, they really play some beautiful rugby, and their ability to keep the ball moving, their support lines, their offloading in the tackle. Yeah, it was really good rugby to watch. But conversely, when they weren't able to do that, they looked pretty ordinary.
All right, we'll come back to your 3 points in a moment. But you and McKenzie, you also watched the game. Your thoughts?
Yeah, similar to Eddie, I was actually impressed by the lack of influence the referees were having in the game until it got a bit messy in the last 15 minutes. France, their ability to straighten the attack and to use just hands, they're all across the board. They're able to play very straight and use every person to be able to create the overlap and give their wingers some space, and their wingers profited from that in the game. So I'm talking more tactically. Interesting, I was looking for things that were different from maybe last year how the game was played. France played their forwards much wider off their short lineouts, and their two second rows. I mean, the number 5, Gillard, he was outstanding in terms of ball carries. But, that third try, I think it was, we had second row passing the second row out wide. That was off broken play, but they played their forwards much wider off short lineouts and then played back from that. So that was subtly different in terms of tactical approach. Most teams play their forwards a bit closer to the lineout. And then there are other things, France, there were times there when the lineout was already in motion and the France hooker wasn't even in position. So I don't know if that was tactical or excitement, I don't know, but I thought this happened a couple of times, and I thought, well, is there something going on there? Because not giving the hooker any time to stand there and get nervous. He just had to get there and literally toss the ball in. The whole line-out thing for me is different now. The line-out contest, I was going to ask Eddie about the contest in the line-out. To the referees, there's no contest in the line-out now. The teams that run in and they'll just jump. And you can, I don't know about the crooked throws or whatever. Is that applied to does the contest have to be at the point the ball's won, or is it just a contest in general? Like if you lift in defence and the ball's thrown crooked, is that a problem, or do you have to lift in defence where the ball's being won, and if it's crooked, then it's actually the referee has to do something? There seems to be no real contest in the line-out anymore, so that's possibly a problem for the game in the future. I don't know, but generally speaking, as Eddie said, France were good when they had the ball. They won all the aerial contests. Ireland got back into the game a little bit. They looked a bit predictable, to be honest, Ireland. They didn't have a lot of ways to score except for just playing very direct. And in the end, they were just reverting to trying to be spoilers at the back of rucks and things like that. So there wasn't much going on. France scored a good try from wheeling the scrum. Nothing revolutionary there, but they used a good scrum tactic, wheeled the scrum, scored on the short side. So France were pretty good all round. They just had 30 minutes off in the second half when they put all their replacements on. They just seemed to lose momentum.
Eddie Jones, that point about the contest at the lineout, what is the trend? What is the insight that you can give the audience about that?
I'm not sure, mate. I don't think anyone is, but clearly France had a tactic to get the ball in as quickly as possible. And the simplicity of their line out stood out. They won the ball quickly, shifted the ball from that point. I think generally the law is that there's got to be a genuine contest for the ball for the call for it to be not straight, and a genuine contest at the interpretation of the referee has got to be at where the ball is. Common sense would be it would be. So he's probably right in what he allowed.
I agree on that. But the point is that, early in the game, both teams were just literally running in and jumping. It's impossible to set a defence on a shorter line in particular, to set any sort of meaningful defence at that point. So, then good on France. They were playing their forwards wider, much wider, and if you can get away with the line without the line, if there's no line contest in the line out, then your second rowers don't have to be able to jump, as traditionally used to be the case. And they got, France have got a couple of really good, ball carrying second rowers, and then Aradoo came on. I mean, I coached his father, so I felt pretty old when Aradoo came on in the second half, in the second row. But they're all very athletic and very good with the ball carry, but very good at that short offloading game at the line. And they use their numbers. That's the thing that there's no cutouts. France use their numbers all the time to be able to create space for the winger, which is old school. There's nothing new in that. But rather than throwing cutout passes, they used every set of hands, and everyone was in good position to be able to take those passes on the whole. And if you think about it, in the first half, there was another 2 tries there where France offloaded to Ireland twice, and that prevented 2 tries. Had that, it would have been 5 tries in the first half.
So, Eddie Jones, you take on France at Rugby World Cup in Brisbane in the second round. As an opposing coach assessing the game, what are the pieces that you're looking at and assessing as you're starting to assemble your thoughts and ideas about how your Japanese team will play against this French team? What clues do you take out of today?
Oh, it's far too early, mate. It's far too early to be looking at that. This is Six Nations in itself. There's another Six Nations to go. All you're looking at is as Ewen was talking about, trends of how they're trying to play. What are they trying to evolve to? I think Ewan's point about the lineouts. I think there'll be a crackdown on that, because you're supposed to come in set. You've got to allow the opposition to have the opportunity to match up numbers. So that's something that's crept into the game, that's been allowed over a period of time, if they're proactive, they'll have a meeting on the weekend and say, right, that's the end of that. Send out an edict on Monday, and that should stop. There's a great opportunity there for World Rugby to show some leadership.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think you can say the lineout's a contest. Like watching that game, it's not really a contest, because there's no pressure on. If you haven't got a contest in the air, you don't have to throw the ball straight. So therein lies. So that's really just it's really just a restart of play. So the question is how much of a contest they want to make it. So it's one game, and we'll see how it goes. But as a trend, teams have been moving in late, and I think that's a problem. They stand away, make a call, then they'll come in and change position quickly. I think it's an area they've got to manage to make sure that the line is still a contest. Otherwise it's just a restart and play. So you might as well just tap the ball and go.
You and McKenzie, were you impressed with the depth in the quality of players that France were able to put into their 23? And how much does that pay from the top 14 premiership, having the depth of quality that they do in that domestic premiership in France at the moment?
Well, they've clearly got depth. I mean, you see play. I mean, the number 13, he was good too. Like, he was a handful. So Deporter, I think he was very good. So you get surprised. Even the guys that came off the bench, they were good, but they lost momentum in terms of the way they play, and that got down to the aerial contests in the end. France, to me, kicked at unusual times. They obviously kicked a few box kicks, but Ireland kicked at all predictable times. There's always a set defence, so you get to the aerial contest. France were able to kick at unusual times, and got the benefit of their players being out of position or whatever. So there's no set defence in terms of receiving the ball. Then it gets, and if there was a contest, and you saw it with the Ireland wingers, particularly early on, if you lead with a hand forward, you're most likely going to knock it on. So there's what's the point in contesting? If you knock it on, they're going to get the scrum put in worst case. You've got the skills there in terms of retrieving the ball. And that's what I think they missed. Hanson, for instance, is a really good player for them aerially. And I think they missed that in the game. And the difference in the 10s is something else. They played, the French 10 was more robust and was able to take the line, which suited the game in terms of using the numbers and the short passing game. That suited that. Whereas Prendergast, he's a really pretty 10, like he's got a lot of skill, but it wasn't useful till when they were chasing the scoreline. He was able to create some opportunities, but other than that, he wasn't giving many opportunities to players around. He was trying to, but there's no real change up there. When you watch Dupont, for instance, he has a 9, but he takes the line on, and the French 10 took the line on too when they had to. So there's the threats there across the board. France have got great depth. They pick players from the Poe's doing really well in the top 14. The players are there, so they reward players that are doing from the clubs that do well. And I think that they also select the players that suit the style of game, and so you can't not be impressed with the skill level across the board, across the whole team. And they keep rewarding guys that have got the skill set that they need. And that's one thing that I admire about French rugby, is that they've always tried to play with that flair. Yes, they can play aggressively and whatever, but they've got that flair element, and that's never sacrificed. And the players that exhibit that in club football get rewarded in the national team.
Eddie Jones, obviously then, a happy occasion evening for the French. What did you take from the Irish?
Well, if we just go back a step, with the French, the depth of their talent comes from a strategic move from the French Rugby Union. When they were awarded the World Cup in 2023, they changed. They were able with the clubs to change the number of foreign players playing in the top 14, and as a result of, rather than having teams full of foreign players, young players were able to come through, and we're seeing the results of that. Their depth of talent is quite incredible. Big, strong, tall guys competing for each other. Penno, anyone talk about Penno 12 months ago, and they talk about him as being one of the best wingers in the world, and now he can't even get into 23. He's the biggest backslapper there as they're running on the field. So it shows you the depth of their talent. I think Ireland's going through one of those tricky periods, mate. I feel for Andy Farrell. He's been there, he's seen the best of it, and now, he's got some injuries. There's some depth issues for him. He's got a young 10, what you were saying about the 10, I agree with, but he's also a young guy, he's still only 21. So he's got a lot of rugby ahead of him. Jalabert is probably 6 or 7 years or even more experienced than him. And Jalabert was one of those guys who was criticised when he first came to Test rugby for being a bit flighty. So it'll take him time, and it's one of those difficult periods for Ireland.
All right. Well, listen, we didn't have you on the program earlier in the week, but just give us your thoughts then about the other teams in the Six Nations, Italy, Scotland, your assessment of Italy going into the tournament.
Well, Italy, I think, they're coming off 2 good Six Nations. Under Cressida, they've developed a real consistent physicality about their play. They're a high-kicking team. Their scrum's pretty consistent. Their line-out, and particularly their maul, strong. And they've got a good kicking game. They've got a couple of good wingers that are strong in the air and run hard. 2 Aussie boys, Ione and Lewis Liner, who was playing in England when I was there. Good young kid. And they got a bit of brilliance. The fullback, I think, is out for the Six Nations, or at least for the first game, who gives them something a little bit different. So they're a good, tough team. Scotland are probably are going through a similar period that Ireland. They've got to regenerate a little bit. They've There's lost a number of very good players, and I think this will be maybe a difficult tournament for them.
All right. And what about the actual contest itself? Italy versus Scotland in the first round of the Six Nations.
Yeah, I think the first 20 minutes is going to decide that game. I think, yeah, they'll both be pretty nervous going the game, which is generally the case for the first Six Nations. Scotland will feel like they're under a bit of pressure to perform. Italy have got to cope with probably, for many years they've never had the tag of being favourites going in the game. So I think that handling the psychological part of the game is going to be important. So I think whoever can get on the front foot in the first 20 minutes, as we saw with the game tonight, the game was basically, as soon as France got 14 ahead, it was always going to be difficult for Ireland in those conditions to catch them.
And Ewen McKenzie, your thoughts, have they changed at all about Italy-Scotland?
I joined a tipping competition with my mates there in New York. I said I'd probably favour a draw, but I think I tipped Italy. I can't remember now. It's pretty close. We'll see how they go. I mean, I think in the end, when in doubt, go with the home team.
Yeah, indeed. All right, Eddie Jones, your assessment of England and your assessment of Wales going into the Six Nations.
Yeah, well, I think if you look at the teams in the Six Nations, probably all the teams are going through a bit of a generation change, but probably the most settled teams are England and France, and I think they'll be the two that fight it out. Steve's done a good job to refresh the team. He's still got some good senior players there, Jamie George, Genge, but brought through some younger guys. They know how they want to play. I think all the players are bought into the style of play. They'll play that high kicking game, play up the back of what they get from that, aligned with a strong scrum and a strong maul. Wales, you hope they keep improving, mate. For World Rugby, I think it's important. They had a win against us in November, which will give them a bit of confidence. But it's going to be a tough tournament for them again.
All right, and this particular match at Twickenham, your thoughts about the actual game itself?
Well, could get a bit ugly. I think England, first game at Twickenham, they'll come out. They'll be full of energy, full of intent. Physically, I think they'll be probably too good for Wales. So Wales have got to try to find a way to stay in the game early. If they can stay in the game early, then it could be England-Wales games are always pretty tight, mate. Unless England can get away early in the game, I think it'll be a pretty tight game. There won't be much in it.
Okay, and Ewen McKenzie, for you?
Well, I agree with Eddie. I don't think I see England winning, but it depends on how they start. I think that the result we've just seen, the way France played will actually give England some incentive to get out there, and not that they need incentive, but shows the standard of the competition and what they're up against. So they'll want to start with a bang and make sure that they get bonus points and etc., because that's going to probably count and possibly in the tournament. So they're going to make sure that they get a good start and build on that. So they've got a pretty settled team. The only question marks for me, and I think we saw a little bit of Ireland, when the props don't have the Ireland have had a very settled front row for a long time, and now they've had a few injuries. You start to miss those players. England's got a couple of injuries up front, which I mentioned the other day. That's the only sort of Achilles heel for me. Otherwise, they're a pretty good side. I mean, they've got Itoji's on the bench. They got an outstanding bench coming into the game, which for me is always the thing. That's the thing I look at first I look at the quality of the bench. I'll see how the game's going to probably finish. And England, to me, got too much firepower in that last period of the game.
All right, plenty to look forward to over the weekend. Just another topic, Eddie Jones. Changes that have been announced as trials throughout the Super Rugby season. of different law variations. No mandatory card for a penalty try. Once the referee has said use it, no more players can be added to the ruck. More leniency around quick taps. Removal of scrums for accidental offsides. And change to the 50-22. You will now allow teams to obtain a 50-22 if passing back into their own half before kicking it. What is your overall thoughts about these laws that have been introduced, and also the TMO? The TMO can now only intervene if the referee has overlooked an act of foul play, which is yellow or red card worthy, and if there's been a clear and obvious infringement leading up to a try. So you've seen the laws. What is your view on those trials that will take place through Super Rugby?
I think in terms of the TMO, I think it's a great move. We've chatted about that before. I think anything we can to get the game back to the referee and use the TMO for serious foul play or for goal line decisions. The only thing I'd like to see with goal line decisions is they limit the number of rucks they go back to. I don't think they've put a number on that. I think all the other variations, interpretations are really good. So I think they've thought about this well, put it in place. The only thing I don't like is taking the scrum out for accidental offside. I think, the scrum's there for a reason. I wouldn't want to see the scrum come out of the game. I think we just need to manage it really well. As the referee did tonight, I thought he did a great job in the scrum.
Yeah, for sure. Your view, you
So,
and McKenzie.
I'm 100% the same as Eddie. I think that they're well thought out and subtle but important changes that hopefully will make the game function better. So I think across the board, I think quite good. If you look at the game that's just finished, there were 2 points. There are 2 points there. The thing that still obviously, the point that worries me, held up over the line, goes to the dropout. For me, that seems like there's still a problem with that for me. Like you give the ball back to them, then they kick it down the field. Okay, you get possession back, but you lose 20, 30 metres on the field. You get the possession back, but you've just gone over the try line. For me, I don't think that they've got that right. That's just a personal opinion. And secondly, there was that DuPont, we tried to intercept the ball. That didn't go to yellow card. I watched it. Don't know. I heard them interpreting on the field, but that would have been a yellow card probably last year if he touched it. So I'm thinking I'm not talking about Super Rugby. I'm thinking that's a good sign if they're not just going straight to yellow card, because that could have really changed the game there. Ireland had just scored a couple of tries, gone to yellow card there, bang, Ireland are right back in that game. Based on, I look at it and I go, I don't see that. Again, I don't see it as cynical. He's a good enough player to be able to intercept that ball, and his instinct is just to go for it. So I don't think he's not slapping it down. I think he was really, so I don't see that as a negative. So I think that was a good result out of the game, and hopefully a positive sign for the future of the game, yellow cards and the influence. Yeah.
All right. So, Eddie Jones, only a few more minutes before you do have to duck away to your commitments, but the draw for Rugby World Cup 2027 has taken place this week. What are your thoughts? You obviously now have your games sorted out in front of you. You have Samoa in Newcastle, France in Brisbane, and the USA in Adelaide. First of all, from your perspective, are you happy with that? Or I suppose there's not much you can do about it, so you've got to be happy with it.
Yeah, well, I was always taught never to look a gift horse in the mouth. So whatever you get, you take. We're happy with whatever we get. Just we'll work out how we do all our logistics and how we're going to play the games a little bit later. But the interesting one for me is the decision, and I'm sure it's a decision from the organising committee for Australia to play Hong Kong first. I don't know how many runs they scored in the Ashes series in Perth, but they might have more points in that game.
So what is your thought about that? Because my sense of it was, and it's probably the romantic in me, I was looking for that big, heavy contest up front, something that would give you months of build up to, what's going to happen, similar to what we saw in 2023, a game to really set the tournament alight, but it's sort of a bit of a letdown that Australia plays Hong Kong, China. But really, I think at the end of the day, it's a financial decision that they can play Australia, New Zealand in Sydney, 22,000 extra tickets available. Whatever the ticket price is, it'll probably be plenty. And when you consider that World Rugby makes 95% of its money every 4 years out of 6 weeks, they've probably got to take the money, and I think they've sort of alluded to that being the case. So, what would you have done? Would you have taken the money, or would you have had the romance?
Well, I think you get money from theatre and stories. Like people watch sport because they want to see the drama of it. Australia plays New Zealand in the first game. Both teams are under pressure to win. The story out of it: one team's wins is on the road, and the other team's under pressure in the rest of the tournament. And they're the sort of stories that get people involved in rugby, particularly when you're not a rugby follower, which the World Cup tends to attract. It tends to attract a lot of non-rugby people to watch it. To me, it was a massive disappointment, mate. And no disrespect to Hong Kong, but it's their first World Cup. It's going to be difficult for them. It's going to be a difficult game. And you're going to watch the first game of the World Cup, and you basically know what the result is. It's how many Australia's going to win by, and does it set the tournament up to how you want it to be? Just lacks ambition, mate, to me.
Yes, well, certainly I have had my say about it, and it's time to move on, really. It's what's done is done, and we look forward to the tournament. But thanks again for joining us. We'll speak to you again early next week. We'll let you get on with your very busy day there in Japan.
We're not talking rugby, we're building it. Rugby Unity.
Eddie Jones continuing his work there as the Japanese head coach, and very grateful as always for him to join us on the program. But Ewen McKenzie, your thoughts about it? Would you have had put the money in the bank or have the romance?
The money comes from the tournament in total, you know what I mean? So I don't think you're right. You've got to set up the tone of the tournament. I go back to 91. England played New Zealand in the first, England's the host. They played New Zealand first up. They lost. They still made the final. You know what I mean? Like, I think the dynamics follows through the tournament. To be, it's like the air went out of the balloon when I saw that. I get it. I get it, but I sort of don't get it. Then to be honest, I started look. I went to open up the rest of the draw, and I was looking for the games that were going to be interesting, and there's not a lot. I go through, and there's the contests are interesting and where they are. So there's two parts to this. There's the game, the one we're talking about. And I think that's the wrong way to start. But secondly, you just read out what Japan is doing. They go Newcastle, Brisbane, Adelaide, right? The concept of teams having a home base and then affiliating with the whatever town it is, and then getting that connection with the local community, that's not part of this tournament, which I think is a real shame. Everyone's on the road, which means the fan base is on the road. Maybe great for Qantas and Jetstar and whatever else, but no good for the local community. So then you look at then I went and looked at where the games are being played, and you look at I'm looking at Newcastle, and I'm looking at Townsville and Adelaide at some extent. You're looking to see what the connection with the community is going to be like, and it's hard for them to connect. Yes, there's games on, but they're all different teams. So there's no local buy-in, which you normally get at a World Cup, where a team feels like they own it. The Japanese team becomes the Townsville's team. You know what I mean? So they all get out there and support them and do stuff during the week and get connected with the tournament that way. I really feel that's missing. And then so they're the two big takeaways from the draw, that everyone's on the move, including the fan base. And so that's maybe great commercially, but not great. The romance side of it's not there. And then you look at the draw. Eddie didn't say it, but look, he's got 3 6-day turnarounds. I think it is. Look, that's tough. He's got France in the middle, 6-day turnarounds. That's tough to be able to move those distances, and then you've got a 6-day turnaround. So he's right when he says he's going to make the best of it. That's a tough gig. You go from Brisbane to Adelaide. That's a lost day. So that's 5 days you've got to prepare for the next game, sort of thing. So there's lots of. It is what it is, and they'll make the best of it. It'll still be a good tournament, but I think there's some elements there that have seem to be lost in that were sort of traditional elements that seem to have just been sacrificed for the money gods. Yep.
But do you think do you think that it is that's driven this? Because even in 2023, the regional groupings were, Australia, I know in its pool matches were playing in the what was that, in the eastern part of France, the northeastern corner of the country.
They've been based in Montpellier. They're different areas. There's a connection,
Yeah.
So, we were. So it allows you to build a base and sort of get a bit of a home thing going on, but that doesn't appear to be possible. Japan's just on the move, so it's a bit like a mini tour in a way. So they won't feel connected to any part of Australia, and no part of Australia is going to feel connected to them, which seems a bit sad in the way it's lost. Even in the World Cup in soccer, they have a home base, and they talk about that in the lead-in, and the local towns get prepared because they know they're going to be hosting, a team from somewhere, and then they get buy-in, and they get there, and the mayor meets the team, and then they give them the keys to the city and all that sort of stuff, and there's sort of like a real community connection, and so that goes to the games that are on at that venue, but that's not part of this tournament. I'm just disappointed.
All right. Well, the third voice, there has been plenty of activity this week, and Sagala Uso on Reddit agrees with us. I can understand the logic around Hong Kong, China as the opener, as they don't think there's any other way to sell it. But this is a terrible look to the first game as an opener. At least having Chile would have been somewhat better from a rugby perspective. Ewen McKenzie? Sagala Uso would like to know your thoughts, whether
I agree.
Chile might have been a better opener.
Yeah, I think from a competitive point of view, that's possibly right. I mean, I think it's Chile's first World Cup too, so we don't know. But Chile have certainly been performing well in recent times. So, yes, I just think you got to goes back. We got the New Zealand game, because of the way they've set up the pools. Now we've got these round of 16. It's a different tournament structure. You've now got less. It's not like you've got 2 games of quality in the pools. You've really just got that. There's the one, whereas before you could probably argue there was a second team there that might have been relatively competitive. And a decision for Australia in the first game is the problem you got now is Australia's going to go, well, we're playing Hong Kong. What's our next game? We'll just save our players for the Kiwi game in Sydney. And so you run out the B team, the so-called B, the second string team in the first round of the competition. That's what, that's what you got. So then people are going, who's this? They're like, not who's this, but who's on the wing? So like it's sort of, you're going to get the players that play one game in the tournament, which happens,
Yeah.
So.
Anyway, as I say, what's done is done. So from the third voice as well, some comments. Peter Robinson from South Africa. Keep up the good work. I've loved the game since the British and Irish Lions toured to South Africa in 1974. Gary Emery on YouTube. Hi, thanks, David, for uploading another informative edition. Great to hear the views of Ewen. And Naya Hero says, the purpose of this program is admirable. The future prosperity of rugby union in Japan is shaky because of the decreasing numbers of players in contrast to the rising popularity of the domestic competition. So I want Eddie to make the Japanese national team perform well at the next World Cup. Well, Naohiro, I think I can guarantee you that that's what he will be trying to do, and he would be squeezing as much activity into every minute of every day to ensure Japan gets the outcome. Now, DGB on YouTube says, geez, Ewan, a wee bit harsh on Scotland versus Wales for the wooden spoon. Were it not for your Sir namesake last-minute heroics at Murrayfield, the Scots coulda, woulda and shoulda beaten the All Blacks. Are the Azzurri the Wallabies of the Northern Hemisphere? Discuss.
Well, we'll see. I mean, I'm happy. I'd be really happy for Scotland to be further up the ladder, but they've been a bit indifferent. They've been a bit up and down. Hopefully they're on the way back. I'm a keen fan of Scotland, but I'm only go on where they've sort of been. And Italy's definitely been improving, so we can't deny that. They've had probably their best tournament in the last outing, so it's up to them to maintain that. And they haven't been a consistent team over the years, but I like to think that they've got some consistency in the coaching side of things and in the selection side of it, and some momentum through just some confidence. So I'm happy to be proved wrong. Wales, we need to go well. Like everyone wants Wales to go well. They're just not in that position at the moment. They've got some battles in their own backyard going on, which is probably not helping. But we need Wales to be strong. That'll be that's good for world rugby. But it is what it is. You know, I'm happy to be wrong. I think the finishing order for me in the tournament, Scotland, Italy. You'd like to think Scotland finishes fourth probably, but Italy might be pushing in that position. We'll see. I can't really pick it, which is disappointing. I'd like to say, and I have looked at the tournament and I thought Scotland, England. I think England will win the tournament, but I'm still reserved about Scotland, England at Murrayfield. That's always been a big game, and it's always been a problem for England. So, I'd love to see Scotland produce their best on that day, even though I haven't tipped it that way.
Yeah.
I'd still like to see it. That'd be good for rugby.
Yeah, of course. And interestingly, I saw some reports this morning just out of Wales that they still have 55,000 tickets remain to be sold for the Six Nations matches at the Principality Stadium. Just how difficult then, when you think about this mood bubble that is sitting around Welsh rugby at the moment, the Welsh board doubling down on decisions that they've made. Just how difficult is it as a coach, as a player, to manage performance while you're dealing with that sort of context?
It is difficult because it's always about alignment, and any successful team's always got the back room. And when I say the back room, I'm talking about the administration, not just the team back room, but the administration. There's pretty good alignment, and there's plenty of evidence across that. Obviously, I know it from Australian rugby's perspective, but in other countries the same. So you see Ireland have been a very aligned team, but also very aligned off the field in terms of their development programs and whatever. So, and they've got a benefit out of that. They've been sitting at the top rankings for some time now. Wales, on the other hand, have had a lot of problems in the background, and so I think that there is an impact, because the conversations in the pubs and around the ends and around the dinner table and whatever are about teams fighting for their survival, and the way Wales is set up, like it's a very community based, it's a very town based culture there, and so if the team, and there's a lot of history, rugby history around those around the different towns around Wales. And some of that's already been foregone. It's already foregone with the professional game. And, they had 4 teams, and now they're looking to shrink that even more down. So I think it's a real dent in the pride of the Welsh and the Welsh rugby, which has been, was the bastion of the Lions for a long time. A lot of Welsh players in there, a lot of famous names. And so it's been a real downward slide. And but you got to get to the bottom sometimes and build. So you kind of hope the administration is doing the right thing, but it does permeate because the conversations of all the fans, they're all old supporters. They've seen the good times, and they weren't that far. They weren't that long ago that they were quite competitive in the Six Nations and winning it under Gatland. So it does have an influence. You can't say it doesn't. And then what's the media talking about? They're not talking about team performance. They're talking about what's going on in the structure of the competitions.
Well, as we do say each week, as this story continues, all the very best to everybody in Welsh rugby in finding a compromise solution of some sort that will enable a strong foundation to be established to continue with the strengthening of Welsh rugby. Alistair Campbell from YouTube, and I'm not sure if it's the Alistair Campbell, could well be. I know he is a rugby fan, and I know he and Eddie Jones know each other well. The England bandwagon again. Every time, the same story. England get a few results and they become favourites. On what basis are they favourites to win in Paris? Do they have more depth? Ewen McKenzie.
They've definitely got more depth. And I think I can't remember what their winning streak is. So you can't deny the fact that they've been consistently successful in recent times. So, and that's using their depth. They've developed depth. So Eddie said it before, there's got a good mixture of youth and experience. So we can't ignore that. And I think that they've modernised their approach. We've talked about their approach off the field. They've been embracing social media and the whole what goes around the edges of the game to be successful commercially and whatever. That's all. England's probably the richest rugby. It probably is the richest rugby union in the world. And when you've got money, you can do things, and that makes a big difference in terms of the game development and whatever. So they've got a good premiership that's working. Generally speaking, obviously the clubs themselves, how they manage themselves is still a question mark at times financially, but they're bringing players through and they've got depth in position. So you can't argue that. And the fact that they've been able to compete through the November tests, that's normally been a bit of a hiccup for them, but it hasn't been. They've got through that, and you can't deny consistency, and that's what happens. There's teams get a run. Ireland have had it. England looks like they might be on the cusp of that. We'll wait and see. I'm tipping them to do well based on what I've seen, but that doesn't mean they will on the day. The France-England game is probably the most pivotal one, and the fact that it's at home for France is a big plus for them.
Yeah, well, for mine anyway, I just like the way that this England team has developed over this period. I've spoken about it before, going back, even before the Argentinian tour, and then the way that Steve Borthwick has managed the team since then. I think you've got to give him enormous amount of credit for the way that they have developed, the way that he's allowed the team to develop. He's a very experienced coach when you consider the amount of time that he did spend as an assistant to Eddie Jones in his time in France and then again at England, and has now come in and he's put his stamp on this team. So, no one will be getting carried away. No one will be thinking that they own a spot. And I just think there'll be great competition in this team, and they do. And it's a funny thing, isn't it? They're like a happy team. They look to me to be a happy team, and I do think that helps. I think when there is harmony, there is generally alignment, and there can always be competition. But if players are enjoying themselves, which the England players look to be, in my experience anyway, that does tend to lead to good performances.
I agree 100%. You just can't deny that. And whilst everyone likes to see England, everyone's traditionally cheered for whoever's playing against England. You can't help but admire, what they've done in recent times, in particular, and the way they played the game as well. It hasn't been stodgy. They've got some. They've been expressive, and they've got some interesting personalities. And they've played with skill too. And up front, I said it the other day. They've got forwards that are very skillful. They're front rowers and the like. So I think that you've got to give them credit for that.
MMF Surge asked the question, are the assistant coaches really the brains trust behind the Wallabies? I've noted that ever since Jeff Parling went back to the UK, the Wallabies lineouts were terrible. So perhaps the question, Ewen McKenzie, out of that is really the role of the assistant coach. What is it? As a head coach, well, you were probably, the greatest assistant coach, of all time when you consider the success that you had at the Brumbies and then at the Wallabies, assisting Rod McQueen before you then, merged into or took your career into head coaching. What is the role of the assistant coach, and what should people understand about it?
The assistant coaches are, they're interfacing with the players, particularly on a technical level. So they're looking to develop the game technically and tactically as well. So to bring ideas forward tactically about the opposition, and then in a format with the head coach, you'd come up and develop what the total strategy is going to be for that week or for the next game. So they've got a more technical involvement. Generally, I'm talking generally speaking. Not every team's set up the same way, and I'll tell you a story. I was just looking at the Six Nations assistant coaches. So broadly, that's the difference. And a lot of the assistant coaches, their best attributes are they are really good assistant coaches, but they're not going to be the head coach because that's a different role. But there's a lot of them are aspirational, and so you need to understand where they sit in that pecking order. And a lot of us assistant coaches go to the head coaching roles and don't succeed because it is different. So it's from a playing point of view, the player interface with the assistant coaches is very technical. You're looking at videos, you're trying to improve the player. The players like that they like that relationship because there's no politics in that. It's just purely I'm trying to make you better, and I'm trying to assist you, and so players appreciate that. The head coach comes along and he's got to pick a team. And so you'll get input from the assistant coaches, but he's the one that's got to pick a team. He's the one that's got to deal with the media and the board and whether you win or lose and all those sorts of things. But you've got to pick a team, and the players are either in or out. So the dynamics are different. So that's it broadly. But you also got to decide whether the players, if in a club situation, the players even going to be contracted or delisted or whatever, how much they get. All those things are in the mix, and all those things can create. What I say, easy to be liked, hard to be respected. You've got to make respectful decisions in that space. You can make lots of decisions that people like, but you've got to make the respectful and hard decisions. So that's the fundamental difference. But if you look at I was looking through the Six Nations. I actually just looked through the Six Nations assistant coaches for each of the teams, and there's different numbers of coaches. But the more successful teams have got. They've generally embraced successful players, but not always high-profile players. There are some high-profile players dotted in amongst, but for instance, the guy sitting next to the French assistant coach Laurent Sampere, he was my reserve hooker when I was at Stade Francais, but he's now a French assistant coach, and he looks exactly the same age as he was when I was coaching him. But he's a great guy. But I had to look up and see he's now he's a specific skills coach for the French team, which is great. But I think back, and that was his personality at the time. Assistant coaches and coaches in general, they have a need to understand how the game functions, and then what influences that. And they have that personality where they're actually interested in the detail. There's a lot of players I know, a lot of famous players I know and have met, and they're not interested in the mechanics of the game. They were just naturally talented, but they're not interested in the function of the game and how people work together and the opportunities and the tactical opportunity. They're just not interested in it at all. And whereas players who mightn't be as famous had this desire to understand the mechanics of the game, and they're the ones that end up going on and being good assistant coaches, and obviously some of them press on and be head coaches as well. But there's fundamental differences between head coach, assistant coaches, and then how many of them do you have? In the old days, you'd have one or two, and now there seems to be 5 or 6. The more you have, the more you become a man, effectively a CEO managing staff, managing what they're actually doing and how much time they get to spend with the team. That becomes a problem too. If you have too many people, you end up managing the coaches and not managing the team.
Yeah, in my experience, that time thing is clear. You know, there's never enough time. You know, the strength and conditioning people want time.
No, there's not
everybody needs more time.
No, I just said it. And I just said it before. I said it before. You got a 6-day prep. Eddie's got 3 6-day preparations with a travel day in each of those weeks, so he's down to bugger all time. And all of those assistant coaches, rightfully and logically, feel they want to have the same input. But their input will be limited because of there's only so much time. You need team preparation time. You need individual preparation. The strength and conditioning coaches, the medical team wants to get their hands on people, etc. And the administration, there'll be jerseys to sign and all other things you've got to do and sponsors to look after. It's a big competition for the coach to manage the availability. And sometimes the assistant coaches, they just don't get the time they want. So you'll see them walking around with a laptop in their hand, trying to grab the player at breakfast or something like that, show them some video clips of some line out or something. That's what happens. You know, you'll see them walking around with these laptops trying to get the players to look at video. So the players want to have a rest or whatever. They want to just eat their breakfast and they've got an assistant coach. So because it's all time, so everyone's time poor in a short week.
Very good. Well, listen, thank you again, audience, the third voice. Great contribution to the program. So remember, your voice is crucial in shaping the future prosperity of rugby union around the world. So please keep the comments coming and keep the questions coming. If you do want to have your question answered by Ewen, McKenzie and Eddie Jones, click the link in the description, or indeed pop in a question to the socials, be it on TikTok, Instagram and Facebook. Also, you can subscribe to our Substack for exclusive content, behind-the-scenes insights and full podcast access, which is ad-free on the Substack. Now, Ewen, McKenzie, lots of rugby being played again in Europe. The Italy 15 takes on Scotland A. The Italy under-20s take on the Scotland under-20s, and Ireland A take on England at Thomond Park. The England under-20s are playing the Wales under-20s, and France playing Ireland also in the Six Nations under-20s. In the Rugby Europe competition, Netherlands will play Spain, Belgium are playing Portugal, and Germany are taking on Romania. And there's also, we won't go through it all, but there's Premier Women's Rugby in the UK, League One, the Champs, Scottish Premiership Rugby, and indeed the Sevens. The HSBC Sevens is on in Perth. So plenty of rugby union along with the Six Nations to watch this weekend. Anything in particular has caught your fancy for this weekend?
No, those under-20 games will be important. There'll be a few World Cup players in amongst those, I would imagine. So, they're worth watching. I reckon they're really, I think the countries are really getting their development programs worked out. So those under-20 games are producing like the future prospects. And I think that we're seeing a few young guys appearing. Aradou was one, for instance, today for France. You see these guys popping up. So, they're probably the World Cup players of in the next cycle. So worth watching. There should be some real talent there.
Excellent. Yeah, well, they are available on television to be watched. And so, again, I'm not sure if we've had too much feedback around our great pursuit of how many people around the world are watching the Six Nations this weekend. It'll be interesting to see if the Six Nations organisations.
What was interesting is it might be, I don't know why, but I mean, you're watching Stan and you get to half time and the commentary disappears and you're just watching, obviously, replays of the tries that were scored. So I don't know why that is. I don't know why there's no comments. So you have 10 minutes of just watching clips from the first half, but no sound. Now, I don't know why that actually happens, but that might be a pointer to how many countries it's being beamed to. So all of the basically commentary drops out and allows every other country that in their respective language to be able to talk about what just happened. I don't know. I mean, it was Irish.
Yeah, well, that's what it is.
Yeah. So you get these So that's
There's
probably
the international feed, as they call it. So everyone gets the one feed, and clearly Stan have decided that they mightn't have the
advertisers, whatever
the
it is.
resources.
Yeah.
Well, to be able to stand up a halftime program, and so you just see it roll through, and you see those a couple of ads, and then it returns to the highlights from the first half.
Yeah, and it goes back to the Irish commentary again. But the it's interesting because that's that's now sort of accepted practice. But you'd think that's a missed opportunity for for the local rugby scene. There's 10 minutes there of airtime. Okay, you're going to watch the highlights, but there's opportunities there to be able to do something locally, you'd think, in terms of what's going on with rugby. So even if it's a couple of minutes, just to try and tell everyone what's going on in the next few weeks in rugby land. There's an opportunity there because everyone's looking at the screen and you're just waiting for the next 10 minutes to expire.
All right, very good. Well, lots to look forward to this weekend, people, rugby fans around the world. Thanks again so much for your engagement with the program, not only on the main channel, but also across the platform, all of the various social media channels. So please keep the questions coming, the comments coming, and keep the engagement up. It's at really strong levels for the program in terms of comparatively. So we're very pleased about that level of engagement. So if you can keep that happening, it'll help us to keep making these programs and talking to Ewen, McKenzie and Eddie Jones about all that is good and great about our wonderful game of rugby. But certainly a stunning start to the Six Nations, particularly in the first half from France today. So much to look forward to. Beautiful rugby that was played there. It looked a pretty chilly, wet sort of a night there in Paris for the game, but the quality of the football was high. So I think a forerunner of lots to look forward to. So anyway, enjoy the game. However, you are going to consume it, participate in it this weekend. We'll be back on Monday with another program to wrap up the weekend in sport. But until then, please be kind to each other. My name is David Pembroke, and it's bye for now.